Okay, for
Start
those
the beginning.
joining us now, we are 10 minutes into the class on Shemot, because I forgot the camera at home. But the first 10 minutes are going to be posted, or are posted by, you'll have the audio. All right, so what we just did is we went through the introduction to the Sefer Shemot by the Ramban, and we established that this entire Sefer is about exile and redemption, Golus and Geula. But Ramban explains that being redeemed means not just being free or in your own land, but specifically it means three things. It means that a person is in their place. Being in your place is being not in exile. In your place means that we have a Torah, we have a Mishkan, and Hashem dwells amongst the Jewish people in a way that's obvious, that the Shekhinah is amongst us. And that is what we call the indwelling of God with us. And in that state of being, that is called redemption, whether you're in a particular land, even Israel, even the land of Israel, or not. Now, that being the case, that this Sefer is all about Golus and Geula, we're going to look into our Parsha and start analyzing these very concepts at their basis. So we have a question here, what is Golus? What constitutes exile? So this is the Maharal, and if you want, you can look out at handout. No, we're not going to get there. The Maharal says, and Moshe brings this down a lot, that there are three aspects to exile. National exile, and think about what it means to personally be in exile. Okay? The Maharal says there is enslavement under the rule of another. So in a national, in our national story, we were under the sovereignty of Egypt. Okay? Whose interests are not our interests? Who is using us to promote their own interests? When they enslave us to build their country, we are simply instruments so that they can fulfill their dreams and their goals. Okay? We are secondary. We are peripheral. We don't have an identity. We are completely manipulated, subsumed under someone else's identity. Nothing of ourselves is being expressed. Okay? Second aspect of Golus is displacement. We are removed from our familiar place, the place that is truly our home. Everyone has a place that is their place, and they're removed from it. And the third one is dispersal, that everybody is scattered, and in the whole is divided into many, many, many parts. These are the three aspects of Golus. Now, the fact that this is the case is evident in the Bracha in Shemona Esrei, where when we speak about the end of the Golus, the redemption, we actually address these 3 points. So look at your pages, the Bracha in Shemona Esrei, Tekab b'shofar gadol l'cheroseinu. Right? There should be a great shofar blast for our freedom. Now, let's figure out which is which, okay? V'sanes l'kabetz gelu yaseinu, and raise a banner to gather in all of our exiles. V'kabseinu yachad, and then gather us all together as one. Me'arba kanfos ha'aretz, from the 4 corners of the world, le'artzeinu, to our land. Le'artzeinu is in the Sfard, by the way.
Where is this?
It's in page 1, front page. Baruch at Hashem mekabetz nitchei amo Yisrael. So what's what? Tekab b'shofar gadol l'cheroseinu, that is addressing what part of Golus? Cheros. We're asking for a cheros, freedom from enslavement. Okay? And then raise a banner, okay, to gather us together, all the kabetz, to assemble us all together. What would that be? That would be dispersal. 2. 3. And the third one, gather us together back to our land, would be 2, displacement. So it's 1, 3, 2. Okay? Now, let's think about this not just on a national level, which is easy for everyone to think about. We are scattered today, and as a nation we're scattered. We are not in our place, and we cannot assert our own interests. We're always having to assert, to abide by or take into consideration other values, other interests that aren't ours. That's the reality. It's not as bad today as it was in Germany or in, but this is still definitely Golus. What's a personal Golus? Let's apply these things to a person's state of being. A personal gullus is when they're enslaved, meaning under the rule of foreign or false ideas or goals or drives, other values, other needs, things that are not intrinsically ours. All right? Even to be able to identify them takes some knowledge. Second of all, we're displaced. We don't feel centered in our own true place of existence. Remember what we always talk about. What is a Jewish person? Really all human beings, but we feel this more keenly because we're always obsessed with it. And this is our heritage, this is our message, this is everything. This is what was engraved in us at Har Sinai. What is the makom of a Jewish person? The mashal we always give is the fetus in the womb. We are part of something bigger than us that explains us. All right, the famous idea, Gemara brings down, Hashem is mikomo shel olam, the place that the world exists within. But ein ha'olam makomo, but this world doesn't contain Hashem. Think about the fetus and the mother. The mother is the place that the fetus exists within, but the fetus does not entirely contain the mother. That's how it works. So we have a makom, and we don't feel like we're in that makom. We forget we're in that makom. We do things that seem as if that's not true, and then creates dissonance within us. And dispersal, our energies are basically diverted, distracted, diffracted into all kinds of directions. We are not harnessing our energies in one consistent direction. So we could be in a gullus ourselves, okay? Now, what is, in our story, in the Chumash, the Jewish people are in gullus. All these things apply, okay? They're not in their land, they're being enslaved, and they are dispersed throughout the land of Egypt. Before they're all, they eventually, Goshen is their center, but they've been dispersed. Say that in the Haggadah, they were throughout the land of Egypt. So then we have the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the whole story, which we're not going to go into, we've done it in the past, but he grows up, and he becomes concerned, he identifies with the Jewish people very much, and he's concerned with their plight, and he goes out to see what is going on, and everybody knows the story. First he sees the Mitzri oppressing a Jew, and he kills the Mitzri. The next day he goes out, and you know the story. He sees two Jews fighting, okay? They're Dasan and Aviran, and he says, "Hey, Russia, why are you about to hit your friend? Remember that? Why are you fighting?" So they answer this pasuk here. Look in Shemot Beis Yudalin. They said to him, "Vayomer misamcha leish sar v'shofet aleinu." Who made you our boss? What are you getting involved here, telling us what to do, right? Are you go halahargeni ata omer kasher haragta tamitzri? Are you going to kill us like you killed the Mitzri? And Vayira Moshe became very afraid, and he says, Ache noda hadavar, which has many meanings. The pshat is, it's got out, me, Paro's son, that I just killed the Mitzri, I'm in trouble. That's the pshat, okay, which he was in trouble. But the deeper meaning Rashi brings is the following. Ache noda hadavar, now the thing is known. Rashi says, he was afraid of Paro. A midrashic explanation is he felt distressed because he saw that there were wicked men among the Israelites. What kind of wicked men? Balei Loshon Hara, informers. He says, if the pshat is true, that now Paro, if they know and they're openly talking about it and threatening me with it, clearly Paro knows they went and to ingratiate themselves with Paro. They were Balei Loshon Hara. So that's important. He's scared. There's Rishayim among the Jewish people who would betray someone who's helping them, right? There's what Balei Loshon Hara. Since he says, since this is so, perhaps they are not worthy to be delivered from bondage because they're Balei Loshon Hara. Okay. Look at the next one. Ache noda hadavar. The thing is known, right? It's explain it in a literal sense. The fact that I've killed an Egyptian is known, but the midrashic explanation is now it is known to me the matter about which I have been puzzled. How has Israel sinned more than all the 70 nations that they should be oppressed by such crushing servitude? But now I see they deserve it. So what's going on here? Moshe is looking for the reason that the Jewish people are oppressed, not just oppressed, but in such a crushing way. Now, Chachamim explains here, Avram got a nevuah that his children will be strangers in a strange land and they will be persecuted. Okay, But the Sifsei Chachamim explains, A, Avram had other children. Why the Jews are going through this fate? And second of all, why the crushing oppression? That wasn't part of the deal. It was just that they would be oppressed, but not that it would be so terrible. So he was looking for a reason. Why are the Jews in exile? Okay? And why such a hard exile? And he even was afraid that because of what he discovered, they wouldn't even merit redemption. In other words, the fact that they were Bali Loshon Hara was, in our parsha, the reason for the quality, the harsh quality of the gullus, and the fear that they wouldn't be redeemed. So if you want to know how do you get into a personal gullus, how were the Jews in gullus, what was the big danger facing the Jews, Moshe discovered it, said there are people that speak Loshon Hara. Now,
how do you know that Loshon Hara? Where does it say?
The Sifsei Chachamim explains that when Rashi says that there were Shayim among them, he brings down the Torah Shabbal Peh, what Rashi means is Malshinim, people who slander. This is a classic idea. Now, let's just put this in perspective, okay? When you want to wonder why the Jewish people were in exile, and Moshe had to, was wondering, trying to figure out what could be the sin that caused this, and that's, and that it's not, that's God forbid, it's, shouldn't endure much longer, but it's still enduring. The sin wasn't clearly discoverable. It was not that they were all murderers, they were all adulterers, and they're all thieves. That would be obvious. That that their families are, there's no nuclear family, there's tons of immorality. All the things that were very evident in Egypt about their lifestyle. They were idol worshippers, they were witchcraft worshippers, they were, who knows what. If there would have been an obvious answer, he wouldn't have had to wonder why the Jews are in Golan. So in terms of the Jewish people's madrega, it was incomparably high compared to the Egyptians. When we always say that they were on the 49th level of Tumah, I want to digress here for a second. It is fundamental to understand what that means. Okay? Because if there's only 49 levels and the Jews were on it, because they spoke Loshon Hara, and there's only one case in the whole story of a woman who got herself into trouble, which is the one who was raped by the Mitzri that Moshe killed, because the Torah points out that she was too, loose or whatever. So, if there was no adultery among them, and by the way, as usual, the Torah doesn't blame the victim. So it says she kind of went out there, but still he killed the Mitzri. Okay? So first of all, there was no adultery. There was no murder. Okay? There was none of that stuff. So what do we mean by the 49th level of Tumah? We are speaking about an intellectual, spiritual Tumah. Meaning that the levels of the ancestors, the Avos and the Imahos, which had been achieved, of a pure faith and understanding of monotheism, of Hashem Echad, of a complete rejection of Avodah Zarah, of a complete knowledge that there's only Hashem to rely on, all of that had practically been lost with the Jews in Egypt. They were actually, it's not specified in the Torah, but we know from the Navi, they were worshiping idols. Okay? And they were supposed to rid themselves of these idols before Yetzias Mitzrayim, and they weren't even exactly able to. They even came out of Mitzrayim with some idols. That's the Tumah we're talking about. We are not talking about a moral and ethical degeneracy like the Egyptians. Okay? Because if the Jews were on the 49th, what exactly Madrega, there was no lower to go, where were the Egyptians? Murdering people, bathing in babies' blood, adultery everywhere. Do you know that in Makos Bechoros, there were so many deaths in every household because this kid was the firstborn from that man, and this kid was the firstborn from that man, et cetera, et cetera. We were nowhere like that. There was no comparison. This was the Tumah, okay? It was a Tumah of concept, of connection to Hashem. Now, so if we're looking in the Torah for what constitutes Golus, so what we're going to get here is that people would turn on each other. We've spoken about this. If a person is not connected to Hashem and they feel alone, okay, then they will view themselves always in danger, always afraid that their own little Dalet Amos is, not secure, and they will turn and look at everyone else as a threat. And they will always try, everybody else will be an opponent a threat, either instrumentalized, like Paro instrumentalized the Jews, turned them into slaves, or if they refuse to cooperate and be used by me, then they become a threat to me. And when two people are trying to hurt each other, that's because they see each other as a threat. And nobody is a threat to anyone if a person knows that they are, part of Hashem's existence and protected by Hashem and guided and governed by Hashem and in Hashem's world. Nobody's a threat. And that's what David HaMelech, as we spoke about, really felt. Gam Kielech V'Gates Al Mavis Lo Yirah, it was okay. Everything would be raging around him, but he was secure. So Loshon Hara comes simply from the fact that everybody lets themselves feel threatened by other people and has a need to devalue them in order to secure themselves. Okay, whether it's done for entertainment, because people are bored, because they really want to promote themselves, because they want to undermine someone else, it's always coming from a sense of that this person's success or whatever is a threat to me, and it does me well to diminish them and elevate myself, and that comes from living in a world disconnected. That comes from Golus. Now, to understand how horrible it is to be a Baal Loshon Hara, okay? Look at Rambam's Hilchos Tshuva. Included in the list of people that have no chelik in Olam Haba. Listen what Rambam writes. The following individuals do not have a chelik in Olam Haba. Their souls are cut off and they are judged for their great wickedness and sin forever. That's of course if they don't do tshuva. You can do tshuva on anything. Okay? The minim, the apikorsim, the kofrim. By the way, these terms are, depending on what you don't believe in, you have a different label. Okay? If you don't believe in the Torah Mishamayim, if you don't believe in one mitzvah, if you don't believe that Hashem speaks to humanity, different things. Okay. Those who deny the resurrection of the dead and the coming of Mashiach, the Redeemer. Those who rebel against Hashem. Those who cause the many to sin. Those who separate themselves from the community. Those who proudly commit sins in public, as Yehoiakim. Do you notice he just said Yehoiakim commits sins in public? That's not Loshon Hara, right? He said those who proudly commit sins in public, like Yehoiakim. So if somebody does a sin in public, openly, clear and proudly, it's obviously not Loshon Hara because it's so. And those who betray Jews to Gentile authorities, hello our parsha, okay, with Dasan Biradan. Those who cast fear upon the people for reasons other than the service of Hashem. Anybody who is a dictator or holds some kind of hoards power over other people for their own purposes. Murderers, Balei Loshon Hara. And those who are Moshe or Lasso, men who try to cover up their bris milah, okay? In this list is Balei Loshon Hara. That's super scary. Super scary, okay? And because it's such a horrible thing, we apply a verse in Tehillim to our Shemona Esrei every day. The last end of Shemona Esrei is not part of the formulation of the original Shemona Esrei of the Anshe Knesset Gdolah, but added later by one of the Amorim, that last final paragraph, Elokai Nitzor Loshon Meira. That comes from Tehillim, 34:14. Nitzor Loshon Chameira, Svasecha Midaber Mirmo. So we say, Hashem, please help me guard my tongue from Ra, evil is Loshon Hara, and my lips, now we're going to analyze this, from speaking deceitfully. Okay? We are scared that we end our Shemona Esrei with this. Now don't look at the context. The last bracha before this in Shemona Esrei is Sim Shalom, Tova, Bracha. Okay? We cannot have Shalom and Am Yisrael and Bracha, everybody, being as fruitful as they can and as productive as they can and being good to each other, if we're still viewing each other as threats and competing with each other and undermining each other. So right after you ask for Sim Shalom, then it immediately becomes a very, very practical thing that I should therefore not drive a wedge in that Shalom or in that bracha and all these wonderful things that we want by dividing people, by speaking Loshon Hara, by putting our, it flows perfectly. It flows perfectly as the private tefillah that comes after the bracha of Sim Shalom. And we ask Hashem for two things, and this is what we're going to focus on now, the depths of Golus. We ask Hashem I shouldn't speak Loshon Hara, but I also shouldn't speak words of deceit. Now, look at this. My tongue, Elokai nitzor lashoni meira. My tongue shouldn't speak Loshon Hara, but my lips should not speak speak deceitfully. What is the difference, think about it, between the tongue speaking Loshon Hara and the lips being deceitful? Okay, now we have to understand what deceit is. And here's what my grandfather says in Rosh Hashanah prayer. The avoidance of Loshon Hara can lead to deceit. When in an effort to conceal the details of something derogatory that was said about another person, a person would invent something and tell him an untruth to spare him. Deceive a person, not tell him the truth that, which would constitute somebody said this about you, this was what I heard about you, oh no, this isn't, so you deceive them and say, oh no, I didn't hear this, nobody said that, this is no, you have no problem here, right? You deceive a person in an effort not to speak Loshon Hara. This happens all the time, all right? We ask Hashem to help us avoid circumstances where we might be tempted to be deceitful and tell an untruth no matter how noble the purpose. Now there's a lot of situations where it's not a good idea to blurt out the truth, okay? But there's a difference between just not saying something and being deceitful, okay? And there's a lot of different reasons. So, let's break it down. We're looking for the cause of Golus. In this week's Parsha, Moshe was looking for the cause of Golus, and he found it, not in all this moral degeneracy, no. It was that the Jewish people were divided. They were not one. They had lost the concept of echad, that Hashem is one, and that we are part of that one. Remember we said Avram opened his tent on 4 sides, and he said, you see, let me show you what I mean, that we're all part of Hashem. You see, you're all part of my world. There's no barriers between me and you. What's good for you is good for me. Your worries are my worries. Your joy is my joy. Your happiness is my happiness. You're part of my existence, remember? That's a oneness. Go ahead.
What is the evidence that Dasan and Aviram were representative of Klal Yisrael?
That's clearly the way Rashi sees it. He's saying Moshe had a question, how could it be they're in Golus? And now I see there are Malshinim among them, and that they are, they have this trait. So clearly, it's being taught to us through Rashi that Moshe felt this was a problem in the nation. Not everybody in the nation, but Dasan and Aviram represent the worst forces in the nation. So it's that's the Masorah, that Am Yisrael are in Golus for the fact that among them were Bali Loshon Hara.
Yeah, when did Moshe discover that he's a Jew?
Oh, that goes, he was always nursed by his mother, Yocheved. Basia herself, his mother who adopted him and found him, became a Jew, had him nursed by his own mother, so he always knew who he was. He knew who he was. Yeah.
This is a departure from Abraham's.
Right, so let's be careful there. Avraham, the Malach, okay? We have a little, we're referring to a case where the Malachim came to Avram and said, you're told, you're going to have a child, right? And remember Sarah laughed, and she said, my husband's old. And they flipped it a little bit and said, she said, I'm old. Like, how could it be? She said, I'm old. That's supposed to, my husband's old. So it says you're allowed to switch things a little bit, mipnei hashalom. That is not deceit. Deceit is when you don't tell a person the truth. Because and we're going to analyze it in a second, and we're going to get to the deeper level. Deceiving other people because we don't think they can handle the truth is one level. Even deeper and much more pervasive and happening all day, every day, is deceiving ourselves. That's the ultimate goal. Now, when a person knows, let's take it in stages so it's clear. Loshon Hara means we don't view ourselves as part of a whole, and we view each other as threats to us. It's like the mashal is, there are 2 fetuses in a womb, both have their own umbilical cord, both are being sustained directly by the mother. Neither of them is getting in the way of the other person's existence and survival, but they don't realize this, so they think the other person is competition to their survival, and they start fighting with each other, thinking that they're the threat. No one's a threat. They're not a threat to each other. So Am Yisrael forgets that we're part of Hashem, that we're provided for by Hashem, and starts seeing each other as a threat. And especially in a situation where we are enslaved, if you have more bread, I have less bread, and it's not a simple thing, because everybody's struggling for their survival in a physical way, everybody else who has a drop more means less for me, right? But imagine spiritually, everybody's struggling spiritually to establish for themselves a sense of value and status and importance and relevance and uniqueness, and someone else is smarter than me, is more accomplished than me, is stronger, more popular than me, prettier than me, richer than me, whatever. Now, who am I? Who am I then? And if our identity is entirely a product of ourselves and not our participation in Hashem's existence, then we are very threatened by everybody and everything, and then we instantly have to make sure to secure ourselves by devaluing other people. That's the first, of course, a very terrible aspect of Gullus, because Gullus means that I'm existing in a way where I am enslaved by values or goals that are about survival, emotional survival, but my context is other people and my surviving in their eyes, okay? And then I ingratiate myself to other people, and I violate my own standards to please other people. I'm enslaved by my need to exist, to maintain my existence that other people seem to have control of. And then, of course, I am distracted. My efforts are going in every direction because I'm trying to cover all bases and not miss a trick, make sure that nobody has any reason to devalue me or lower me or weaken me or undermine me, right? That's a form of exile, and I am not in my place. I'm not living for myself and for who I really am. I'm in someone else's place. These are aspects of personal exile. But beyond that, even that is when we deceive ourselves and also deceive other people. Now let's analyze this for a reason.
What is Loshon Hara?
Loshon Hara means you put other people down by revealing unflattering or unkind or damaging things about them. Okay? So I wrote here a little bit. Geula is when we are a base for the Shekhinah. Okay? And I'm not going to read this because what we just talked about. Okay? Now, the question is deception, deceiving others and deceiving ourselves. Why do we deceive other people? Someone says to you, these are classic examples, I don't know why I keep going out, let's say on dates or whatever, I go on job interviews, and it's not working out. Now we might know that we could see that they're doing something that's not appealing, that's turning people. You talk too much, you talk too loud, you're too know-it-all, you're too opinionated, you're always telling everyone your opinions, you're always, let's say we could see something. 9 times out of 10, we don't say it. Because why? Why do we deceive people? Which isn't fair, because if they had the knowledge, they could help themselves. So why do we deceive people? Because essentially we've made a calculation, and we've evaluated what we know about this person and our relationship to this person, and we've decided they don't have the tools to handle the truth. Either, as we wrote right here, they will deny it, they will defend themselves, they will get angry, or they will feel hopeless, they will feel embarrassed, they will get depressed, they will feel rejected and unloved. They just don't have the tools to handle the truth, so we will opt for deceiving them and not give them the knowledge that they really need to help themselves. But that's not our fault. They have become the kind of person that I can't be honest with. Because every time I try to point something out, and let's say, and I'm a person who has their best in mind, they don't respond well. It's not true. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't do this. I don't do that. How could you say something? And you know what you do? I can't talk to them. They've made themselves the kind of person that I have to deceive. Then we ask ourselves, are we the kind of people that other people have to deceive? Because we can't handle truth. Now, who handled truth perfectly? Who's the model for handling truth and not deceiving himself? David HaMelech. Nasan HaNavi comes to him, gives him there's 2 accusations in that story. It's very important. It's not just about Bathsheba. In fact, the Bathsheba part is the minor part of it. The part is that when David took Bathsheba, and it was less than, admirable circumstances, and he should have done it a different way, he realized that, and he wanted to cover it up. So he had to, it's a complicated story, he wanted to make sure that her husband, who he, or might justifiably might have been worthy of the death sentence, should be killed. But what did he do? He did not say, you know what, you sinned against me, you're gonna go to Beis Din, you're gonna be tried, you're gonna have an opportunity to defend yourself, and Beis Din is gonna decide your fate, okay? He didn't do that. He created a chain of events where it looked like that he was accidentally killed in a war by the Ammoni nation. Now in the olden days, maybe even till modern age, it was considered a huge disgrace to be killed by your enemy. So you would kill yourself instead of being killed by your enemy. Even certain cultures would give people the opportunity to kill themselves versus being killed. But that's even more noble, be kill yourself than be killed by the court, but even worse than that would be killed by the enemy. That's like the ultimate disgrace. So Loshon Hanavi said to David, you had Uriah killed by the hands, by the sword of Bnei Ammon? That's not right. What do you do to really cover your own feeling that you did the wrong thing? And even if he was worthy of being killed, that's not a way to do it. What about his dignity? And killed by the enemy in a silly battle? What about his cover? That he should die? But let Beis Din decide his fate, like a nobly. So the second David heard this, what did he say? Chatasi. He was a person you could talk to. The Navi didn't have to be afraid to talk to him. Unfortunately, in contrast to this, when Shmuel came to Shaul and said, I told you to kill the whole nation of Amalek, Shaul started to defend himself. But I did everything you asked, and I did everything right, but we kept the sheep and the animals because we want to give them as karbanos, but I did it right, and then you told me to kill everyone, but I kept Agog because the people asked me to. And he completely defended himself, and Shmuel said, look, you're going to lose your malchus because of this. And then the tragedy was that Shmuel, who invested so much in Shaul, never saw Shaul again till the day that Shmuel died. It was considered he mourned the loss of his protege, this person, Shaul. And maybe the reason Shmuel never went to see Shaul again after he lost his malchus is because you couldn't talk to him. The only one who finally talked to him was when we're getting all into Navi, but there was a point where David reasoned with him and said, why are you trying to kill me, and why am I your enemy? And he showed him, I have this piece of the code, I could have killed you, I didn't kill you. And Shaul says, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm wrong, you're a tzaddik, you're more than me. And then not long after that, Shaul is killed in a war. So in the end, he does admit that he was wrong in his, but for a long time, he just couldn't see, he couldn't accept the fact that he is mishandling this loss of power. So the idea here is that how can we set ourselves up in the best possible situation that we don't deceive others, that others don't need to deceive us, and deeper than all of that we stop deceiving ourselves. Okay? We deceive others because we don't think they have the tools to handle the truth. We just don't want to hurt them. Why will they be hurt? Because they can't hear the truth. If you want to say to someone, you know why I don't hang out with you? Because honestly, you speak so much, you never listen to me. Okay? If a person could handle that, it would be a wonderful thing to tell them, because then the friendship could improve. But if they cannot handle that, you're not going to tell it to them, and then they're going to live not knowing it, and they're going to do the same mistake with everybody else, and they themselves will, be the victims. So, okay, it's one thing to not to think that everyone else, these people don't have tools to handle the truth.
Where do you draw the line, though, of feel like you're being judgmental? Like, where do we come to tell somebody else?
Right, so we're going to get that right now. So, next level. We have to be the kind of people that other people are not scared to tell us the truth. It is important when people tell us the truth. Sometimes you hear Loshon Hara about a person, and you want to tell them what is being said about them so that they will know how to protect themselves from this being said about them. Okay? It is a kindness to tell a person sometimes, I want you to know what I've heard, not who said it, because that's rechilas, So that you should, whatever you're doing that's causing people to speak like that, watch yourself, okay? It's a kindness to tell people that, if they can handle it, okay? It would be a kindness if someone would tell us that, so if we're the kind of person that they know they can handle it. Now, so when can a person, what are the factors involved that make a person able to hear the truth and able to be the kind of person that their friends tell them the truth and do not deceive them? Okay, so number one, the person has to be like David, humble, growing. Okay, where does that come from? Okay, where does that come from? Humble and growing comes from a very simple paradigm shift, simple as anything. I can hear the truth. I can be humble. I can realize I'm making a mistake. I'm hurting myself. I'm hurting others. I'm going in circles. I'm not progressing. If I don't have my ego involved, and I'm just trying to grow, well, how does a person get their ego out of it? Have our I, the my ani, completely subsumed within the anochi. If I am part of Hashem, we said this so many times, Moshe used to stress all the time. Moshe stresses all the time. Again, all the time. Hashem set up a world where he is hidden. And therefore Hashem essentially, like Moshe says, puts his crown in our hands, or his fate in our hands. Okay? Hashem says, I will only be known through you. I'm counting on you. You are my partner in this world. You have my kohos in you to be creators, and you even have within you the intuitive knowledge of what's right and wrong, and when you're good, and when you're doing okay, and when you're not. You know it. I need you. I also know you're human. I gave you Bechira. Okay? I know you have ups and downs. Either way, I'm by your side. You have second chances. That's Rachamim. You always have a second chance. There's always tshuva. Tshuva to just say I goofed and start again. I'm here by you. I'm counting on you. I have confidence in you. You are not representing yourself. You're representing us. Now, if a person feels I am here exclusively representing myself, and then I don't want to hear that I am, something that's going to make me feel embarrassed or less than someone else. It's too painful to hear. Nobody, people don't like you, they don't want you to work for them, they don't think you're so smart, no one wants to hear it, because if I'm here representing myself, that's devastating. But if I'm representing us, Hashem and me, and I do something that's wrong, and I go, I goofed, I behaved in a way that doesn't represent Hashem, okay, I'm going to do tshuva, I'm going to start again tomorrow. This is not a repudiation of me and that I am a zero. This is that in my task as trying to be a good representative of Hashem, I didn't do so well, so let me try again. It's not me. There's much more than me here. I'm doing a job, and I didn't do my job so well. Okay, I'll try to do my job better. The boss is still behind me. It's not I am establishing myself, and I am a failure. It's two completely different things. So we have to know two things. There's an us, and the us that we're part of. This is the idea. Look what we said here, right? The us, this is where we get the strength not to be deceived. If I know that this us, okay, even in real life, another person, how will I be as a human being, think about this in human terms, be able to be makabel the truth, if the person telling me the truth, okay, is someone that I feel fully supported by the other, fully loved, understood, accepted, trusted. In short, if we know there is no possibility for rejection, then we are able to hear the truth from someone. And this is exactly what Hashem establishes in this week's parsha. It says, Vayar melech Hashem elav b'lavas ha'esh. Hashem appears to Moshe in the sneh. Why in the sneh? Why in that little lowly thorn bush? Look at Rashi. Why not in a big tree? 3 fundamental words. Imo anochi b'tzara. I am with them in this sorrow. In being in Golus, I am with them. I am with them. Remember we talked about it? Hashem said to Yaakov, I'm going down with you, I'm going to be there with you, and I'm going to come up with you. I'm with you, and not only am I with you, I'm stuck with you. Our fates are intertangled, entwined. So, yeah.
In the case of deception, wasn't the ultimate deception what Rivka did to Yitzchak?
Hold that thought.
It's been there for days.
Okay, hold on. Let me just get through this. So Hashem tells us, I am with you in the tzara. Furthermore, look in Shemos Gimel Zayin. Hashem says, Ra'o, Ra'isi, As'ani, Ami, Asher b'Mitzrayim, Esakasham, Shamati. Look at Rashi. Okay, and God knew. Okay? Look at the last 4 words of the pasuk. Ki yadati es ma'kovav. I know what they're going through. I know their ka'ev, their pain, and their suffering, that they're in gullus. I know it. What does Rashi says? And God knew? Signifying as much as, for I have set my heart upon noticing and understanding their sorrows. I have not hidden my eyes from their distress, nor have I stopped my ears against the hearing the cry. In other words, Hashem says, I am complete, I get them. I hear them. I know them. I am with them. And therefore, I understand the pain that they're in. If a person knows that we are all imperfect, and of course we're going to make mistakes, but the person by our side is never going to reject us and always going to understand our challenges and the difficulties, and they're going to point out to us where we are off, then we feel safe and secure, and in that case we can hear the truth. And if there's someone like that we play that role for someone, our children, our spouse, our family, whatever, then they can trust the truth from us. But it all comes from being secure and safe. Now, when we say here, Hashem says, I know them. We're going to go back to something we did a few weeks ago from the Rambam in terms of what does it mean that Hashem knows us. We said that every time the verb in Torah, especially in the beginning, is yada, yodea, the first time we find it, va'adam yada es chava, okay, he knew her. The biblical knowing is when 2 people who are separate become one. Knowing is when you are one. The knower and the what you know, the knower and the knowledge is one. So remember the Rambam said, by virtue, vayeda is the biblical way of saying intimacy, but it uses the word knowing because the deeper idea is when 2 become one, that's called knowing, because when something that is outside of you becomes part of you, which means, in philosophical terms, when the knower and the knowledge are one, what I know and what I know is me. So look what the Rambam says in Hilchos Yesodei Torah, Perek Beis, entry 10. It's not a pasuk of Mishnah, but entry 10. Technically, okay. He says the following. Look at what I bolded. Look at what you could read the whole thing, it's very important, but in the next page, thus, he does not recognize and know the creation in terms of the creation as we know them. In other words, I would know you, Pamti, because Pamti tells me, this is who I am, and this is my life history, and this is what I like to eat, and this is my thing, and here's my blood work, and here's my genetic testing, here's my DNA. That's how I know her. But that's how you know another person, by them basically, illuminating themselves, by them explaining themselves, by living with the person, by getting to know a person. That's not how Hashem knows us. By that that learning by experience or by someone explaining themselves. Because rather Hashem knows the creations, he knows them in terms of himself. Thus, since he knows himself, he knows everything. For existence of everything else is dependent on him. In other words, Hashem knows us by virtue of knowing himself. We are part, like the fetus in the womb, part of Hashem's existence. So Hashem knows us because he knows himself. And there is nothing in us that is not coming from and part of and designed by and known to and an extension of Hashem. It's all Hashem. So Hashem knows us. If we know, here's where we get so much relief. If we know that Hashem knows us, and as we learned, has attached his name to us, which we explained the first pasuk in Shemona Esrei. Hashem brings the geula, as you'll see in the last handout, to Am Yisrael, L'man Shemo B'Yahava, for the sake of his own name, in love. We said, which is it? Is it because of for his own sake or love? It's out of love, Hashem attached his name to us. So Hashem will only be known through our Yeshua. And therefore, out of great love, he brings redemption to us for his own sake. He will only be known if Am Yisrael has a great Yeshua. So it's established. So listen, here's what it is. It's such a relief person goofs. They know they goofed. Everybody knows when they goofed. Everybody knows when they're on the wrong track. Everybody knows when they're in a bad habit, and a bad pattern, or everyone knows when they're not going forward, they're going around in circles, right? Other people know it too, right? If we see that Hashem knows it too, but here's what I say, Hashem knows it. Hashem knows I'm fooling myself, that I'm putting on this show, and inside it's not, I'm not exactly what I pretend to be. And everybody knows that, Hashem knows that I go up and down, I struggle, I have, good, I go forward, I go backwards, I have slumps. Hashem knows everything. I am not fooling Hashem. And at the same time, I'm part of it. Hashem has confidence in me and counting on me and giving me 1,000,000 second chances, 1,000,000 second chances. Every minute is another second chance. And in the end, the only one I have to look in the face, is Hashem. And my only job is to do better and better every day vis-a-vis Hashem. And Hashem knows me anyway. So why am I putting on a show, scared to hear what people say to me, scared to hear the truth, scared, basically deceiving myself all the time because nobody's going to tell someone the truth if they're going to get in trouble for it. The most deluded people on earth are dictators. Nobody tells them the truth because if you tell them, oh, we lost the war, they kill you. So you say, we won the war. So, right? So the dictators walking around thinking that all their generals won the war and their army in their country is so powerful. Da-da-da-da. They are the most deluded people of earth because nobody is ever is afraid to tell them the truth. People can become like that too. So in the end, no one needs to deceive themselves if Hashem knows everything anyway, and that's the only thing that's important because in the end, we are not agents of ourselves, we're agents of Hashem. Now, I just added here my grandfather's matzeva. I want to tell you for 1 minute, well, it's late. My grandfather was such an ish emes that he wrote his own gravestone. He did not want anything written that was even in the slightest exaggeration or flattery, or because one thing he refused to do is deceive himself, ever. He was a person you could talk to because he was willing to hear, and you could hear from him. You could also hear the truth directly from him. This is the gravestone he wrote for himself. He just wrote, right? He wrote Shimon ben Chaver, Yehuda Zatzal. Chaver was a term of pride in Germany. Okay. He wrote Rav Dekila Kadosha Kaladas Yeshurin, the Rav of the Holy Congregation. That's where he was in Washington Heights for a long 30 years. Ubelifnim, and before that, he did 3 things. Shemesh Badam for Rabbanis Badamstadt. He was a rabbinical assistant in the town of Darmstadt, Germany. Ube Ischenhausen, he was a Rav for 2 years in the town called Ischenhausen, and Baltimore, where he was there for also close to 30 years. Then the day of his yahrzeit, and then he added, look, the Shem Imo Chana. I mean, he didn't write the day of his yahrzeit. That he left for us to write. He wrote his mother's name was Chana. He added that. Shem Imo Chana, that was in the little writings. And he always had a picture of his mother in front of him, right where he sat on his desk. He revered his mother. And then he added a pasuk on the bottom. So everybody who comes to the kever sees this pasuk. The pasuk is from Mishlei. Nechase b'sha'av lo yatzliach. He who conceals his sins from himself, right, deceives himself, will never succeed. Modeh ba'ozev yerucham. If he admits them and moves on, abandons them, Yerucham, Hashem will have Rahmanas on that the person will have Hashem's Rahmanas. He also said to us, by the way, if somebody has an Aveira that they know they're doing, and they haven't done tshuva for it, do not come to my kever. So, we don't go. We go with trepidation. Okay? He was not joking. This was the message he wanted to leave for posterity. Just be honest with yourself so you can move forward. He was known as an ish emes. His yahrzeit is coming up, Purim time. We can talk about it more then. But in this week's parsha, to make the bottom line, what is gullus? Deepest core gullus, self-deception. Also, the need to deceive others. People not being able to be the kind of person that people don't have to deceive. And in self-deception, part of self-deception is coming from a place that I need to secure my status because I'm alone here, and it's a survival of the fittest world. That comes from being alone, from not feeling connected to Hashem. That's the source of Loshon Hara. That's all in this week's parsha. The source of Golas on many, many, many levels. But this whole sefer is about Geula. There's a lot about Geula, so that's how we're gonna end. We're all gonna get to the second part. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
You know,